Maria Santos woke up at 5:30 every morning. The alarm clock on her small bedside table made a loud buzzing sound that always made her jump. She lived in a tiny apartment in Queens with her 12-year-old daughter Zara. Their home had two small rooms, a kitchen the size of a closet, and one bathroom with a window that never opened properly. Maria worked as a maid for a very rich man named Robert Blackwood. He lived in a huge apartment in Manhattan that cost more money than Maria could make in 10 years. Every day she took 2 buses and 1 subway train to get to his place. The trip took her almost 2 hours each way. Zara was a quiet girl with big brown eyes and long black hair that her mother braided every morning. She was smart and got good grades in school, but she was also very shy. When school was closed for holidays or summer break, Maria had to bring Zara to work with her. She could not afford to pay someone to watch her daughter, and she had no family in New York to help. The first time Zara went to Mr. Blackwood's apartment, her eyes opened wide like saucers. She had never seen a place so big and fancy. The living room was bigger than their entire apartment. There were paintings on the walls that looked like they belonged in a museum. The floors were made of shiny marble that reflected everything like a mirror. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling and sparkled like diamonds, but what caught Zara's attention most was the piano. It sat in the corner of the main living room like a beautiful white giant. The piano was so clean and perfect that it looked like no one had ever touched it. The keys were white as snow, and when the sunlight came through the big windows, the whole piano seemed to glow. Mr. Blackwood was a tall man with gray hair and expensive suits that probably cost more than Maria's rent. He had made his money from computers and technology. People said he was worth billions of dollars. He was not mean to Maria, but he was not very friendly either. He treated her like she was part of the furniture. He would give her a list of things to do and then ignore her for the rest of the day. When Zara first came to the apartment, Mr. Blackwood looked surprised. "Who is this?" he asked Maria. "This is my daughter, Zara," Maria said in her careful English. She was always nervous when she had to speak to Mr. Blackwood. "School is closed today. I hope it is okay that she is here?" Mr. Blackwood looked at Zara for a moment. "She better not touch anything," he said. Then he walked away to his office. Maria felt her face get hot with embarrassment. She took Zara to the kitchen and made her sit at the small table where the cleaning supplies were kept. "You must be very quiet," Maria told her daughter. "Do your homework and do not leave this room unless I say so?" Zara nodded. She understood that her mother's job was very important. Without this job, they would not have enough money for food or rent. So, every day that Zara came to work with her mother, she sat quietly in the kitchen and did her schoolwork. But Zara could hear the piano from the kitchen. Sometimes, when Mr. Blackwood had the radio on, classical music would play throughout the apartment. The sound would float through the rooms like magic. Zara would stop doing her homework and listen. The music made her feel things she could not explain. It was like the notes were talking to her in a language only she could understand. Maria worked very hard every day. She cleaned the huge apartment from top to bottom. She dusted all the expensive furniture, vacuumed the thick carpets, and made sure every surface sparkled. She washed dishes that cost more than her monthly salary. She organized Mr. Blackwood's closets full of designer clothes and shoes. The work was tiring, but Maria never complained. She was grateful to have a job that paid well enough to support her and Zara. Many of her friends who also worked as maids did not make as much money as she did. Mr. Blackwood paid her fairly. Even if he was not very warm or friendly, during lunch breaks, Maria would sit with Zara in the kitchen. They would eat sandwiches that Maria had made at home that morning. Zara would tell her mother about the homework she was doing or the books she was reading. Maria would smile and nod, proud of how smart her daughter was. "Mama," Zara said one day while they were eating lunch, "what kind of music does the piano make?" Maria looked confused. "What do you mean, Mia?" "The big white piano in the living room. Does anyone ever play it?" Maria shook her head. "No, nobody plays it. I think it is just for decoration. Rich people sometimes buy expensive things just to look at them." This made Zara feel sad. She could not understand why someone would have such a beautiful piano and never use it. It seemed like a waste. At night, when she was lying in her small bed in their apartment, Zara would think about the piano. She would imagine what it would sound like if someone played it one day. While Maria was cleaning the living room, Zara quietly walked to the doorway. She stayed hidden behind the wall and watched her mother work. The piano was right there, just a few feet away. Zara wanted so badly to touch the keys just to see what would happen. But she remembered her mother's warning and Mr. Blackwood's harsh words about not touching anything. Maria noticed everything in the apartment, even things that seemed unimportant. She saw that Mr. Blackwood never went near the piano. She never saw any sheet music or piano books anywhere in the apartment. The piano bench was always in the exact same position, and there was never any dust on it because nobody ever sat there. Why do you think he has a piano if he never plays it? Zara asked her mother one evening as they rode the bus home. Maria thought for a moment. Rich people are different from us, she said. They buy things because they can, not because they need them. Maybe he thinks it makes his apartment look more important. Zara pressed her face against the bus window and watched the city go by. She thought about all the music that was trapped inside that beautiful white piano, waiting for someone to set it free. She wondered what it would feel like to press those white and black keys and hear the sounds they would make. Every day, the piano called to her silently. Every day she walked past it and felt a strange pull in her chest. She did not understand why she felt this way about an instrument she had never played. She only knew that when she looked at it, something inside her woke up. As the weeks passed, Zara's curiosity about the piano grew stronger. She started having dreams about playing it. In her dreams, her fingers moved across the keys like they knew exactly what to do. Beautiful music would fill the air, and she would feel complete and happy, but these were only dreams. In real life, Zara was just the maid's daughter, sitting quietly in the kitchen, doing her homework and trying to be invisible. 3 months had passed since Zara first saw the piano. It was a Friday evening in late spring, and Mr. Blackwood was having a dinner party. These parties happened once a month, and they always made Maria very nervous. She had to make sure everything in the apartment was perfect. Rich people would come to eat expensive food and talk about business deals. Maria had to stay late on these days to help serve food and clean up afterward. This meant Zara had to stay late too, sitting quietly in the kitchen while important people walked around the apartment. That Friday, Maria arrived at work earlier than usual. She brought Zara with her because there was no school. Maria had a long list of things to do before the guests arrived at 7 o'clock. She had to dust everything twice, arrange fresh flowers, and make sure all the silverware sparkled. Zara sat at her usual spot in the kitchen with her homework spread out on the small table. She could hear her mother moving around the apartment, getting everything ready. The apartment smelled like the expensive candles Mr. Blackwood liked to burn during his parties. Around 5 o'clock, Mr. Blackwood came out of his office. He was wearing a dark blue suit and looked stressed. He walked through the apartment, checking everything Maria had cleaned. He moved picture frames a tiny bit to the left or right. He adjusted the pillows on the sofa, even though they were already perfect. When he got to the living room, he stopped and stared at the piano. For the first time since Zara had been coming to the apartment, she saw Mr. Blackwood actually look at the piano like he was thinking about it. "Maria," he called out, "come here for a moment." Maria hurried into the living room, her cleaning cloth still in her hand. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood? Does this piano look dusty to you?" he asked, pointing at it. Maria looked at the piano carefully. She cleaned it every single day, just like everything else in the apartment. "No, sir, I clean it every morning." "Good," he said. "Tonight's guests include some very important people. A music producer and a famous music critic will be here. I want them to think I appreciate fine arts." Maria nodded, even though she did not really understand what he meant. She just wanted to make sure he was happy with her work. Mr. Blackwood walked back toward his office, but then he stopped. He had noticed Zara peeking around the corner from the kitchen. She quickly tried to hide, but it was too late. "Your daughter," he said to Maria. "She's been coming here for months now." "Yes, sir," Maria said quietly. "I am sorry if she bothers you. She is very quiet." "She's always staring at the piano," Mr. Blackwood said. It was true. Every time he had seen Zara in the apartment, she was looking toward the living room where the piano sat. Maria felt worried. Was Mr. Blackwood angry about this? "I will tell her to stop," she said quickly. "No, no," Mr. Blackwood said, waving his hand. "I just noticed, that's all." He paused for a moment and then seemed to get an idea. "Actually, bring her out here." Maria's heart started beating fast. "Sir, bring your daughter here. I want to talk to her." Maria went to the kitchen and found Zara sitting very still, her eyes wide with worry. "Mr. Blackwood wants to see you," Maria whispered. "Be very polite and do not touch anything." Zara walked slowly into the living room. Mr. Blackwood was standing next to the piano, looking down at her. He seemed very tall and important, and Zara felt very small. "What's your name again?" he asked. "Zara," she said in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper. "Zara," he repeated. "You like looking at my piano?" Zara did not know if this was a question or a statement. She nodded slightly. "Do you know what kind of piano this is?" Mr. Blackwood asked. Zara shook her head. She knew it was beautiful and white and probably very expensive, but she did not know about different types of pianos. "It's a Steinway grand piano," Mr. Blackwood said proudly. "It costs more than most people make in a year. It's the kind of piano that famous musicians play in concerts." Zara's eyes got even bigger. She had heard of Steinway pianos on the classical music programs that sometimes played on the radio in their apartment. Mr. Blackwood looked at his expensive watch. "My guests will be here in less than 2 hours. Some of them know a lot about music." He seemed to be thinking about something. "Tell me, Zara, can you play piano?" Zara looked at her mother, then back at Mr. Blackwood. "No, sir," she said honestly. "Have you ever tried?" "No, sir. We do not have a piano." Mr. Blackwood nodded, as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. "Well," he said with a smile that seemed forced, "tonight might be interesting for my guests. They're used to seeing expensive things, but they might enjoy something different." Maria did not understand what Mr. Blackwood was thinking, and this made her nervous. "Here's what we're going to do," Mr. Blackwood said, walking over to the piano bench. He pulled it out from under the piano. "Tonight, after dinner, I'm going to ask you to sit here and try to play something, just for fun. My guests might find it amusing." Maria's face went pale. "Mr. Blackwood, sir, I do not think that is a good idea. Zara has never played piano before. She might damage your beautiful piano." "She's just a little girl," Mr. Blackwood said with a laugh. "How much damage could she do? Besides, it might be entertaining." "My guests are always looking for something interesting to talk about." Zara felt confused and a little scared. Mr. Blackwood wanted her to play the piano in front of important people, but she had never played piano before in her life. What if she made terrible sounds? What if she broke something? "I do not know how to play," Zara said quietly. "That's exactly the point," Mr. Blackwood said. "My guests will think it's charming. A little girl trying to play piano for the first time. It's the kind of story they'll tell their friends later." Maria realized that Mr. Blackwood thought this would be funny. He wanted to show Zara to his rich friends like she was some kind of entertainment. This made Maria feel angry, but she could not say anything. She needed this job too much. "Sir," Maria said carefully, "what if she is too nervous? What if she does not want to play?" "Oh, she play," Mr. Blackwood said confidently. "Won't you, Zara? It'll be fun. You've been staring at this piano for months. Here's your chance to actually touch it." Zara looked at the piano. The keys seemed to sparkle in the light from the crystal chandelier above. She had dreamed about touching those keys so many times. But now that Mr. Blackwood was offering to let her try, she felt scared instead of excited. The guests started arriving at 7:00 exactly. Zara could hear their voices from the kitchen as they came into the apartment. They sounded confident and important. Their shoes made clicking sounds on the marble floor. They laughed loudly at things that did not seem very funny. Maria was busy, serving appetizers and making sure everyone had drinks. She kept looking toward the kitchen to check on Zara, who was trying to do her homework but could not concentrate. As the evening went on, Zara could hear the dinner conversation from the kitchen. The guests talked about business deals, expensive vacations, and art collections. They used words that Zara did not understand and mentioned names of people she had never heard of. After dinner, Maria was clearing the dishes when she heard Mr. Blackwood's voice get louder in the living room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I have a little surprise for you tonight. A special performance." Maria's hands started to shake as she carried the plates to the kitchen. The moment she had been dreading was about to happen. "Zara," Mr. Blackwood called out, "come join us in the living room." Zara looked at her mother with frightened eyes. Maria wanted to protect her daughter, but she also knew they could not say no to Mr. Blackwood. "Go," Maria whispered, "and just try your best. It will be over soon." Zara walked slowly into the living room. All the guests turned to look at her. There were about 12 people sitting in expensive chairs, holding crystal glasses filled with wine. They looked at Zara like she was something curious and strange. Zara stood in the middle of the living room, feeling like everyone was staring at her. The rich guests were all dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry that sparkled under the crystal lights. She felt very small in her simple jeans and plain sweater that her mother had bought at a discount store. "This is Zara," Mr. Blackwood announced to his guests with a big smile. "She's the daughter of my housekeeper, and she's been fascinated by my piano for months. Tonight we're going to let her try to play it for the first time." Some of the guests smiled politely, but Zara could tell they thought this was going to be amusing in the wrong way. They expected her to make noise that was not really music. They were ready to watch a little girl embarrass herself. One woman with bright red lipstick leaned over to the man next to her and whispered something that made him chuckle quietly. A man with a gray beard adjusted his glasses and looked at Zara like she was an interesting science experiment. "Go ahead, dear," said a woman wearing so many diamonds that she looked like a Christmas tree. "Don't be shy. We're all very excited to hear what you can do." Mr. Blackwood walked over to the piano and patted the bench. "Sit here, Zara. Just press some keys and see what happens. Think of it as playing, not performing." Zara walked slowly toward the piano. Her legs felt shaky and her hands were sweating. She had dreamed about this moment so many times, but now that it was happening, she felt terrified. She sat down on the piano bench and it felt exactly right, like it was made for her. The keys were in front of her, black and white, waiting. She could smell the wood of the piano and feel the smooth surface under her fingers. "Take your time," Mr. Blackwood said, but his voice sounded impatient. He wanted to get this over with so his guests could talk about something else. Zara placed her hands on the keys, but did not press them yet. Something strange was happening. The moment her fingers touched the piano, she felt different. It was like the piano was talking to her, telling her secrets that only she could understand without thinking about it. Zara began to play. The first notes that came from the piano were soft and gentle. They were not random sounds like everyone expected. They were the beginning of Chopin's Minute Waltz, one of the most difficult pieces of classical music ever written. The room became completely silent. Every conversation stopped. Every glass stopped moving toward lips. Everyone stared at Zara with shock and disbelief. Zara's fingers moved across the keys like they had been doing this for years. Her left hand played the bass notes while her right hand danced through the melody. The music flowed from the piano like water, smooth and perfect and beautiful. The woman with the diamonds put her hand over her mouth in surprise. The man with the gray beard leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide. Even Mr. Blackwood stood frozen, not believing what he was hearing, but Zara was not thinking about any of them. She was lost in the music. Her fingers knew exactly where to go, even though she had never played this piece before. It was like the piano was showing her what to do, guiding her hands to create the sounds she had heard in her dreams. The melody grew louder and more complex. Zara's hands moved faster, playing notes that required years of training to master. She played with feeling and expression, making the music come alive in a way that touched everyone's hearts. One of the guests was a famous music critic named Jonathan Pierce. He wrote reviews for the biggest newspapers in New York. He had heard the world's greatest pianists perform in the most famous concert halls. But what he was hearing now made him question everything he thought he knew about musical talent. Another guest was Linda Shun, a music producer who worked with famous musicians and helped them make records. She had discovered many talented artists over the years, but she had never heard anything like this, especially from a 12-year-old girl who had supposedly never played piano before. As Zara continued playing, the music became even more beautiful. She added her own touches to the piece, small changes that made it sound fresh and new. Her fingers found harmonies that were not in the original composition but fit perfectly. The guests began to look at each other with confusion and amazement. This was not what they had expected at all. They had come to be entertained by a little girl trying to play piano for the first time. Instead, they were witnessing something that seemed impossible. Maria heard the music from the kitchen and dropped the plate she was holding. It crashed to the floor and broke into pieces, but she did not notice. She ran to the living room doorway and saw her daughter sitting at the piano, creating music that was more beautiful than anything she had ever heard. Tears began to fall down Maria's face. She had no idea that Zara could do this. How was this possible? Where had this music come from? When Zara finished the piece, the room stayed silent for several long seconds. Nobody knew what to say. Then, slowly, Jonathan Pierce began to clap. Soon, everyone was applauding, but it was not the polite clapping they had planned to do. It was real applause, the kind that comes from being truly amazed. That was ... Jonathan Pierce started to say, then stopped. He could not find the right words. How long have you been playing piano? Linda Chin asked Zara. Zara looked confused by the question. I have never played piano before, she said honestly. That's impossible, said the woman with the diamonds. Nobody can play like that without years of lessons. Where did you learn that piece? Asked the man with the gray beard. I heard it on the radio, Zara said quietly. Sometimes classical music plays in our apartment. The guests looked at each other in disbelief. A few of them started talking at once, asking questions and making comments. This is remarkable, said Jonathan Pierce. I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of music criticism. She's a natural genius, said Linda Chun. This kind of talent is born, not taught. Mr. Blackwood stood next to the piano, looking confused and a little uncomfortable. This was not how he had planned for the evening to go. He had wanted to show off a cute little girl trying to play piano. Instead, his guests were talking about his maid's daughter like she was some kind of musical miracle. Play something else, said the woman with the diamonds. Please, we must hear more. Zara looked toward the kitchen where her mother was standing. Maria nodded encouragingly, even though she was still crying from shock and pride. This time, Zara played a piece by Mozart. Again, her fingers found the keys perfectly. The music was light and joyful, but also technically perfect. She played with the skill of someone who had been studying piano for decades. When she finished, the applause was even louder than before. Some of the guests were standing up, clapping and cheering like they were at a concert hall. This is unbelievable, Jonathan Pierce said to Linda Shun. I need to write about this. People will never believe it unless they hear it themselves. We need to get her proper training immediately, Linda Chun said. Talent like this cannot be wasted. Mr. Blackwood was beginning to realize that something very important had just happened in his living room. These people were not just being polite. They were genuinely amazed by what they had heard. And suddenly, he was getting all the credit for discovering this talented girl. I always knew there was something special about her, Mr. Blackwood said. Even though this was not true at all, I could tell just by watching her look at the piano. The guests continued to ask Zara questions and praise her playing. They wanted to know about her family, her school, and her dreams. Zara answered as best she could, but she was overwhelmed by all the attention. As the evening ended and the guests prepared to leave, Several of them approached Mr. Blackwood privately. "You must do something about this girl's talent, Jonathan," Pierce told him. "She needs proper piano lessons immediately. This is a once-in-a-lifetime discovery." "I completely agree," said Linda Chun. "I would love to help her in any way I can. She could have an incredible career in music." Mr. Blackwood nodded seriously as if he had been thinking the same thing all along. But the truth was, he was still trying to understand what had just happened. An hour ago, Zara was just the quiet daughter of his maid. Now, some of the most important people in New York's music world were telling him she was a genius. After all the guests left that night, the apartment felt strangely quiet. Maria was in the kitchen, cleaning up the broken plate and finishing the dishes. Her hands were still shaking from what had happened. Zara sat at the kitchen table, looking tired and confused by all the attention she had received. Mr. Blackwood paced around his living room, thinking about what his guests had told him. He kept looking at the piano, as if seeing it for the first time. Jonathan Pierce had given him his business card and made him promise to call about getting Zara proper piano lessons. Linda Chun had done the same thing. "Maria," Mr. Blackwood called from the living room. "Come here, please. Bring Zara with you." Maria felt nervous again. She took Zara's hand and they walked slowly into the living room. Mr. Blackwood was sitting in his expensive leather chair, looking serious. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the sofa across from him. Maria and Zara sat down on the edge of the sofa. They both felt uncomfortable on the fancy furniture that was so different from anything they had at home. "I need to understand something," Mr. Blackwood said, looking directly at Zara. "You told my guests that you had never played piano before tonight. Is that true?" "Yes, sir," Zara said quietly. "Then how did you know those pieces? How did you know where to put your fingers?" Zara looked at her mother, then back at Mr. Blackwood. "I do not know, sir. When I touched the piano, it felt like I knew what to do." "That's impossible," Mr. Blackwood said. "Nobody can play classical music like that without training." Maria spoke up carefully. "Sir, Zara has always loved music. Sometimes she listens to classical music on our old radio. She does things with her fingers like she is playing piano. But we do not have a piano for her to practice on." "What do you mean?" Mr. Blackwood asked. Maria hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. "When Zara listens to music, she moves her fingers like she is playing the songs. She does this on our kitchen table, pretending it is a piano." "I thought it was just a game." Mr. Blackwood stared at them. "You mean she's been teaching herself piano without a piano?" "I found an old keyboard at a thrift store," Maria said quietly. "It was broken and only half the keys worked. It cost $5. Zara would practice on it for hours, even though it barely made any sound." "And where did she learn the songs?" "From the internet," Zara said. "At the library, they have computers. I watch videos of people playing piano on YouTube. I watch their hands and try to remember how they move their fingers." Mr. Blackwood felt a strange feeling in his chest. It was uncomfortable, like something was squeezing his heart. He was beginning to understand what had really happened tonight. "How long have you been doing this?" he asked Zara. "Since I was 8 years old," Zara said. "I heard a piano song on the radio, and it made me feel happy and sad at the same time. I wanted to learn how to make that sound." "4 years," Mr. Blackwood said slowly. "You've been teaching yourself piano for 4 years, using a broken keyboard and YouTube videos." "Yes, sir." Mr. Blackwood was quiet for a long time. He thought about his expensive Steinway piano that he had bought to impress people. He thought about how it had sat in his living room for 3 years without anyone playing it. And he thought about this little girl who had been dreaming of touching piano keys while she sat in his kitchen, doing homework. "The guests tonight," he said finally. "They were very impressed. They think you have special talent." "What does that mean?" Zara asked. "It means you could become a famous piano player someday, but you would need proper lessons. Real piano lessons with a real teacher." Zara's eyes lit up with hope, but Maria looked worried. "Sir," Maria said carefully, "piano lessons are very expensive. I cannot afford to pay for lessons like that." Mr. Blackwood knew this was true. Good piano teachers in New York charged hundreds of dollars per lesson. The kind of teacher that Zara would need would charge even more. I've been thinking about that, Mr. Blackwood said. My guests tonight, they're important people in the music world. They were very excited about Zara's talent. It would look good for me if I helped her. Maria felt confused. Look good, sir. People like stories about helping talented children, Mr. Blackwood explained. If word gets out that I discovered Zara and helped her become successful, it would be good for my reputation, good for my business. Maria began to understand. Mr. Blackwood was not offering to help Zara because he cared about her. He was thinking about how helping her could benefit him. So you would pay for piano lessons? Maria asked. I would consider it, Mr. Blackwood said, but there would be conditions. What kind of conditions? First, Zara would have to work very hard and show that she's serious about music. I'm not going to waste money on someone who isn't dedicated. Zara nodded eagerly. I would work very hard, sir, I promise. Second, Mr. Blackwood continued, if Zara becomes successful, I would expect recognition for my role in helping her. If she gives concerts or becomes famous, people should know that I was the one who gave her the opportunity. Maria felt uncomfortable with this, but she also knew it might be Zara's only chance to get real piano lessons. And third, Mr. Blackwood said, you both need to understand that this would be charity. I would be doing this out of kindness, not because I owe you anything. The word charity made Maria's face feel hot. She worked hard for Mr. Blackwood. Every day. She cleaned his apartment perfectly and never complained about the long hours or difficult work. But he was making it clear that he saw Zara's lessons as a gift, not something they deserved. I understand, sir, Maria said quietly, even though it hurt her pride. Good, Mr. Blackwood said. I'll make some phone calls tomorrow, but remember, this is a big opportunity. Many children would dream of having a chance like this. After they left that night, Maria and Zara rode the bus home in silence. Zara was excited about the possibility of real piano lessons, but Maria felt troubled. When they got to their small apartment, Zara went straight to her room to do more homework. Maria sat at their tiny kitchen table and thought about what had happened that evening. She was happy that people had recognized Zara's talent. She was grateful that Mr. Blackwood was willing to pay for lessons. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. The way Mr. Blackwood's guests had looked at Zara bothered her. Some of them seemed genuinely impressed by her talent, but others looked at her like she was a curiosity, something unusual and interesting to talk about at their next dinner party, and Mr. Blackwood's attitude bothered her even more. He was already taking credit for discovering Zara, even though Zara's talent had nothing to do with him. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Maria also worried about the word charity. She did not want her daughter to grow up feeling like she owed her success to the kindness of rich people. Zara's talent was her own. She had worked for it, even if she had done it without proper tools or teachers, but Maria also knew that this might be Zara's only chance to develop her talent properly. Piano lessons with a good teacher could cost thousands of dollars per month. There was no way Maria could ever afford that on her maid's salary. She thought about all the things Zara had told her over the years, how she practiced on the broken keyboard for hours, how she watched piano videos at the library and tried to memorize the finger movements, how she had been dreaming about playing real piano for so long. Maria made a decision that night. She would accept Mr. Blackwood's offer, but she would make sure Zara understood something important. Her talent belonged to her, not to anyone else. No matter who paid for the lessons, Zara's music came from inside her, from her own hard work and natural ability. The next morning, Maria went to work as usual. Mr. Blackwood was already on the phone when she arrived, talking to someone about piano teachers. She could hear him talking about the talented girl I discovered and my investment in young musical talent. Maria cleaned the apartment and tried not to listen, but his words made her angry. He was already telling the story like he was the hero and Zara was just lucky to have been found by him. When Zara came to the apartment after school that day, Mr. Blackwood called her into his office. I have good news, he told her. I found you a piano teacher. Her name is Professor Elena Voss, and she's one of the best piano teachers in New York. She usually only teaches students who have been playing for many years, but I convinced her to meet with you." Zara felt excited and nervous at the same time. "When will I meet her?" "This Saturday," Mr. Blackwood said. "She wants to hear you play and see if you're really as talented as my guests thought you were. What if she doesn't think I'm good enough?" Zara asked. Mr. Blackwood looked at her seriously. "Then this opportunity will be over before it starts. So you better make sure you impress her." Saturday morning came faster than Zara expected. She woke up early, feeling nervous butterflies in her stomach. Maria had spent the night before helping her pick out the nicest clothes she owned, which was still just a simple dress from a discount store. Professor Elena Voss was coming to Mr. Blackwood's apartment at 10 o'clock. She was famous for teaching some of the best young pianists in the country. Her students went on to play in concert halls around the world and win important competitions. "Remember," Maria told Zara as they rode the bus to work that morning, "just be yourself. Play from your heart, like you did the other night." But Zara felt different today. The magic she had felt when she first touched the piano seemed far away now. What if it had been a mistake? What if she really could not play as well as everyone thought? When they arrived at the apartment, Mr. Blackwood was already dressed in his best suit. He had arranged the living room carefully, making sure the piano was perfectly clean and the lighting was just right. "This is very important, Zara," he told her. "Professor Voss is doing me a big favor by coming here. She usually makes students come to her studio. If she agrees to teach you, it will cost me a lot of money." Zara nodded, but his words made her feel more pressure instead of encouragement. At exactly 10 o'clock. The doorbell rang. Mr. Blackwood opened the door to reveal Professor Elena Voss. She was a tall, thin woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a black dress and carried herself like someone who was used to being respected and obeyed. "Mr. Blackwood," she said in a voice that was polite but not warm, "thank you for inviting me to your home." "Professor Voss, welcome," Mr. Blackwood said with his biggest smile. "I'm so excited for you to meet Zara." Professor Voss looked around the apartment with the eye of someone who knew expensive things. She nodded approvingly at the art on the walls and the quality of the furniture. When she saw the Steinway piano, she smiled for the first time. "Beautiful instrument," she said, walking over to touch the keys gently. "It's in perfect condition. Do you play, Mr. Blackwood?" "Oh, no," he said quickly. "I appreciate music, but I'm not musical myself. The piano is more for ... decoration." Professor Voss raised an eyebrow at this, but said nothing. She had met many wealthy people who bought expensive instruments they never used. "Where is the child?" she asked. Mr. Blackwood called for Zara, who had been waiting nervously in the kitchen with her mother. Zara walked slowly into the living room, feeling very small under Professor Voss's sharp gaze. "So this is the musical genius I've heard about," Professor Voss said, looking Zara up and down. Her voice had a tone that suggested she was not easily impressed. "Yes, this is Zara," Mr. Blackwood said proudly. "She gave an amazing performance for my guests last week. Everyone was completely shocked by her talent." Professor Voss studied Zara carefully. "How old are you, child?" 12, Zara said quietly. "And you've never had piano lessons?" "No, ma'am." "How did you learn to play?" Zara looked at Mr. Blackwood, who nodded encouragingly. "I watch videos on the computer at the library, and I practice on a broken keyboard at home." Professor Voss's expression did not change. "I see, and what pieces do you know?" "I know some Chopin and Mozart," Zara said, "and some other songs I heard on the radio." "Show me," Professor Voss said, pointing to the piano bench. Zara sat down at the piano, but her hands felt shaky. "Professor." Voss stood behind her, watching every movement. Mr. Blackwood sat in his chair. Looking anxious, Zara began to play the same Chopin piece she had played for the dinner guests. But something was wrong. Her fingers felt clumsy, and she made several small mistakes. The music still sounded good, but it was not as perfect as it had been that magical night. When she finished, the room was quiet. Professor Voss walked around the piano, thinking. "Play something else," she said. Zara played a Mozart piece, but again, it was not as smooth as before. She could feel herself getting more nervous with every note. Professor Voss sat down in a chair across from the piano. "Mr. Blackwood, may I speak with you privately?" "Of course," he said. "Zara, please go wait in the kitchen." Zara walked slowly to the kitchen, where her mother was waiting. Maria could tell from Zara's face that things had not gone as well as hoped. "What happened, Mia?" Maria asked softly. "I made mistakes," Zara said, starting to cry. "I could not play as well as I did before. She probably thinks I am not good enough." In the living room, Professor Voss was talking to Mr. Blackwood in a low voice. "The child has natural talent," she said. "That much is clear. But her technique is completely wrong. She has taught herself bad habits that will be very difficult to fix. But she can be taught, right?" Mr. Blackwood asked. "My guests were amazed by her playing." "Talent alone is not enough," Professor Voss said. "She would need to unlearn everything she has taught herself and start completely over. It would take years of intensive work." "How many years?" "At least 3 or 4 years of lessons 3 times per week, plus several hours of practice every day, and that's assuming she has the discipline to work that hard." Mr. Blackwood calculated the cost in his head. 3 lessons per week for 4 years would cost tens of thousands of dollars. "That's quite an investment." "Music education is always expensive," Professor Voss said. "The question is whether you believe this child is worth it. What do you think? Is she worth it?" Professor Voss was quiet for a moment. "I have taught hundreds of students over 30 years. Most of them had been playing piano since they were very young, with proper lessons from the beginning. Very few of them had the natural musical instinct that this child showed me today, even with her technical problems." "So you think she could become a professional musician?" "Possibly. But there are no guarantees in music. I have seen students with great talent give up when the work becomes too difficult. I have seen others with less talent succeed because they were willing to work harder than anyone else." Mr. Blackwood felt unsure. He had expected Professor Voss to be amazed by Zara and tell him that she was definitely going to be a star. Instead, she was talking about years of expensive lessons with no promise of success. "What would you recommend?" he asked. "If you are serious about helping this child, I would be willing to take her as a student. But you need to understand what you are committing to. This is not a short-term project. This is a long-term investment in a child's future. And what if she's not successful? What if all those lessons don't lead to anything?" Professor Voss looked at him with a slightly disapproving expression. "Mr. Blackwood, music education is valuable in itself. Even if Zara never becomes a professional musician, learning to play piano properly will enrich her life in countless ways. But if your only interest is in her potential fame or success, then perhaps you should reconsider this offer." Her words made Mr. Blackwood uncomfortable. He realized that Professor Voss could see exactly what his motivations were. He was not really thinking about what was best for Zara. He was thinking about how helping her might benefit him. "I want to help her," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then call me when you have made your decision," Professor Voss said, standing up. "But do not wait too long. If this child is going to develop her talent properly, she needs to start serious training soon." After Professor Voss left, Mr. Blackwood sat alone in his living room, thinking. The piano seemed to mock him, sitting there beautiful and unused. He thought about what Professor Voss had said about the cost and time commitment. He thought about what his business associates would say if they knew he was spending so much money on his maid's daughter. In the kitchen, Maria was trying to comfort Zara, who was still upset about making mistakes during her audition. "I disappointed everyone," Zara said. "Mr. Blackwood probably will not want to help me now." "You did your best," Maria said. "That is all anyone can ask." But Maria was also worried. She could see that Mr. Blackwood was having second thoughts about his offer. She could tell that he had expected this to be easier and less expensive than it was turning out to be. When Mr. Blackwood called them back into the living room, his expression was serious. "Professor Voss thinks you have talent," he told Zara. But she says it would take years of expensive lessons to develop that talent properly. Zara looked hopeful. Does that mean she will teach me? She's willing to, Mr. Blackwood said slowly. But I need to think about whether this is something I can commit to. It would be a very big responsibility. Maria felt her heart sink. She could hear in his voice that he was looking for a way to back out of his promise. I understand, sir, Maria said quietly. Thank you for trying to help. I haven't made a decision yet, Mr. Blackwood said quickly. I just need some time to think about it. But as the days passed, Mr. Blackwood found more and more reasons to delay his decision. He worried about the cost. He worried about the time commitment. He worried about what would happen if Zara was not successful after all those lessons. Most of all, he realized that helping Zara was not going to be as simple or as rewarding as he had thought. It would not be a quick feel-good story that he could tell at dinner parties. It would be years of hard work and financial commitment, with no guarantee of the kind of success story that would make him look good. Zara continued to come to the apartment with her mother, but the piano seemed different now. 2 weeks passed without any word from Mr. Blackwood about the piano lessons. Zara had almost given up hope when Maria received an unexpected phone call at work one Thursday afternoon. Maria, Mr. Blackwood said, I've decided to move forward with Zara's piano lessons. Professor Voss will start teaching her next week. Maria felt a rush of relief and gratitude. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. But I want to be clear about the expectations, Mr. Blackwood continued. These lessons are expensive, and I expect Zara to take them very seriously. If Professor Voss tells me that Zara is not working hard enough, the lessons will stop immediately. I understand, sir. Zara will work very hard. What Maria did not know was that Mr. Blackwood's decision had not come from kindness. Jonathan Pierce, the music critic, had called him several times asking about Zara. Word was spreading in New York's music circles about the talented girl who had amazed everyone at a private dinner party. Mr. Blackwood realized that people were watching to see what he would do, and refusing to help Zara now would make him look bad. Professor Voss lived in a tall building on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Her apartment was filled with pianos, music books, and photographs of famous musicians. When Zara arrived for her first lesson, she felt intimidated by all the signs of serious musical study. Sit down at the piano, Professor Voss said without any warm greeting. Let me hear you play that Chopin piece again. Zara played the same piece she had played at Mr. Blackwood's apartment, but Professor Voss stopped her after just a few measures. No, 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 she said firmly. Your hand position is completely wrong. Your fingers are too flat. Your wrists are too high. Everything you have taught yourself is incorrect. Zara felt embarrassed and confused. But the music sounds right, she said quietly. The music may sound acceptable to people who do not know better, Professor Voss said. But you are playing with bad technique that will limit your ability to play more difficult pieces. We must start completely over. For the next hour, Professor. Voss made Zara forget everything she thought she knew about playing piano. They worked only on how to sit, how to hold her hands, and how to press the keys properly. Zara did not play a single complete song. This is going to be very difficult for you, Professor Voss said at the end of the lesson. You have natural musical talent, but you have also developed many bad habits. Breaking these habits and learning proper technique will be frustrating. Many students give up during this process. I will not give up, Zara said with determination. Professor Voss looked at her carefully. We shall see. Come back on Wednesday. And practice what I taught you today, nothing else. Do not play any of the pieces you think you know. Only practice the exercises I gave you. The next few months were the hardest of Zara's life. She had to unlearn everything she had taught herself and start over like a complete beginner. Sometimes, she felt like she was getting worse instead of better. Her fingers felt clumsy, and simple exercises seemed harder than the complex pieces she used to play. At home, Maria bought a small digital piano with money she had been saving for emergencies. It was not as nice as Mr. Blackwood's Steinway, but it had all the right keys and worked properly. Zara practiced for 2 hours every day after school. Working on the boring exercises that Professor Voss gave her, some days Zara wanted to quit. She missed the feeling of playing beautiful music. The technical exercises felt like work instead of joy. But every time she felt like giving up, she remembered the magic she had felt that first night at Mr. Blackwood's piano. She wanted to feel that way again. Professor Voss was a demanding teacher, but she was also fair. She never praised Zara unless she truly deserved it, but she also never criticized her unfairly. Slowly, Zara began to understand that Professor Voss was pushing her so hard because she believed in her talent. "You have something special," Professor Voss told her after 3 months of lessons, "but talent alone is not enough. You must be willing to work harder than students who started with proper training from the beginning." By the end of her first year of lessons, Zara's playing had transformed completely. Her technique was now solid and correct. More importantly, she was beginning to understand music in a deeper way. Professor Voss taught her about musical history, different composers, and how to interpret the emotions in each piece. "Now you are ready to start playing real music again," Professor Voss said, "but this time you will play it correctly." When Zara played Chopin again, it sounded completely different from before. The technique was perfect, but more than that, she understood what the composer was trying to express. The music had layers of meaning that she had never noticed when she was teaching herself. Mr. Blackwood sometimes asked Maria about Zara's progress. He seemed pleased when Maria told him that Professor Voss thought Zara was improving rapidly, but he showed no real interest in hearing her play or attending her lessons. What Mr. Blackwood did not realize was that other people were starting to pay attention to Zara's progress. Professor Voss had mentioned her talented student to other music teachers, and word was spreading about the remarkable girl who had overcome such unusual circumstances. During Zara's second year of lessons, Professor Voss entered her in a small competition for young pianists. Zara was nervous because she would be competing against students who had been taking lessons since they were very young. "Do not worry about winning," Professor Voss told her. "Just focus on playing your best. The experience of performing for judges will be valuable, regardless of the results." The competition was held at a music school in Manhattan. Zara had never seen so many serious young musicians in one place. Some of them had expensive instruments and designer clothes. Others looked like they came from wealthy families who could afford the best teachers and music schools. When it was Zara's turn to play, she walked onto the stage feeling determined rather than nervous. She played a piece by Bach that Professor Voss had chosen for her. It was technically challenging but also beautiful and expressive. As she played, Zara felt the same magic she had experienced that first night at Mr. Blackwood's apartment. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence and precision. The music flowed naturally, and she could feel the audience listening intently. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. Zara could see the judges making notes and nodding to each other. Later that day, the results were announced. Zara had won first place in her age group. Professor Voss smiled broadly, the first time Zara had ever seen her look truly happy. "Congratulations," Professor Voss said. "But remember, this is just the beginning. You have much more work to do." The local newspaper wrote a small article about the competition, mentioning Zara's unusual background and her rapid progress under Professor Voss's teaching. When Mr. Blackwood saw the article, he felt a mixture of pride and surprise. He had almost forgotten about his investment in Zara's musical education. "She won a competition," he told his friends at work. "The girl I discovered. My investment is paying off." But for Zara and Maria, the competition win meant something different. It proved that Zara could compete with students who had every advantage she lacked. It showed that her talent, combined with hard work and proper teaching, could overcome any obstacle. Professor Voss began entering Zara in more competitions and recitals. Each performance made her stronger and more confident. She was learning not just to play piano, but to communicate through music, to touch people's hearts with her playing. By the end of her second year with Professor Voss, Zara was no longer the same girl who had sat quietly in Mr. Blackwood's kitchen. She had developed into a serious young musician with discipline, skill, and artistic vision. The broken keyboard and YouTube videos seemed like they belonged to someone else's life, but Zara never forgot where she had come from. She practiced with the same dedication she had shown when all she had was a broken keyboard. She knew that. Every lesson, every hour of practice, was a gift that she could not take for granted. Maria watched her daughter's transformation with amazement and pride. Zara was becoming the person she was meant to be, fulfilling a potential that had always existed but needed the right opportunity to flourish. Professor Voss began to talk about more advanced opportunities for Zara. There were summer music programs, master classes with famous pianists, and eventually the possibility of applying to prestigious music schools. She has the talent to go as far as she wants in music, Professor Voss told Maria during one of their conversations. But she will need continued support and advanced training as she gets older. Maria understood that this meant more years of expensive lessons and programs. She wondered how long Mr. Blackwood would be willing to continue supporting Zara's musical education, especially as the costs increased and the commitment became even more serious. But for now, Zara was thriving. She was becoming the musician she had always dreamed of being, one note at a time. 4 years had passed since that first magical night when Zara played piano for Mr. Blackwood's dinner guests. Now 16 years old, Zara had grown into a confident young woman and an extraordinary pianist. Professor Voss had pushed her harder than any of her other students, and Zara had responded by becoming better than even Professor Voss had dared to hope. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while Zara was getting ready for school. Professor Voss called Maria with news that would change everything. Zara has been accepted to perform in the Carnegie Hall Youth Competition, Professor Voss said, her voice filled with excitement. This is one of the most important piano competitions for young musicians in the country. Maria felt her heart start beating faster. Carnegie Hall was the most famous concert hall in America. Only the most talented young musicians were invited to compete there. Are you sure? Maria asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. I submitted a recording of Zara's playing 6 months ago, Professor Voss explained. The judges listened to hundreds of submissions from around the world. Only 20 pianists were chosen to compete, and Zara is the youngest. When Zara heard the news, she felt excited and terrified at the same time. She had dreamed of playing at Carnegie Hall since she first learned what it was, but she had never imagined it would happen so soon. What will I have to play? Zara asked Professor Voss during her lesson that afternoon. You will perform 2 pieces, Professor Voss said. One will be chosen by the judges, and one will be your own choice. I recommend the Chopin piece you played that first night, but performed with all the technique and understanding you have gained over the past 4 years. Zara smiled at this suggestion. It felt right to return to the piece that had started her journey, but now she would play it as the trained musician she had become. Mr. Blackwood was pleased when he heard about the competition. He had been growing impatient with the cost of Zara's lessons, especially as they had become more expensive over the years. But Carnegie Hall was exactly the kind of prestigious recognition he had been hoping for. This is wonderful news, he told Maria. People will definitely notice when she performs at Carnegie Hall. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. Maria noticed that he said, "we," as if he had been working toward this moment alongside Zara, but she did not say anything. She was too excited about the opportunity to worry about Mr. Blackwood's attitude. The competition was scheduled for 3 months away, giving Zara time to prepare intensively. Professor Voss arranged extra lessons and worked with Zara on every detail of her performance. They practiced not just the notes, but how to walk onto the stage, how to bow to the audience, and how to handle the pressure of performing for important judges. As word spread about Zara's invitation to Carnegie Hall, reporters began calling Professor Voss for interviews. The story of the maid's daughter who had taught herself piano and was now competing at the highest level was exactly the kind of human interest story that newspapers loved. The first article appeared in the New York Times arts section. It told Zara's story from the beginning, starting with that first night when she played for Mr. Blackwood's guests. The article described her as a musical prodigy who overcame incredible obstacles through natural talent and determination. But as Zara read the article, she felt uncomfortable with how the story was being told. The newspaper focused heavily on Mr. Blackwood's role as her benefactor and discoverer. It made her sound like a charity case who had been rescued by a generous rich man, rather than a talented musician who had earned her success through years of hard work. "They make it sound like I was nothing before Mr. Blackwood helped me," Zara said to her mother after reading the article. "They do not mention all the hours I practiced on the broken keyboard or how I taught myself by watching videos." "I know, Mia," Maria said. "But maybe this attention will help your career, even if the story is not told exactly right." More articles followed in different newspapers and magazines. Most of them told the same story. Poor girl gets discovered by wealthy man becomes successful through his generosity. The reporters seemed more interested in the feel-good narrative than in Zara's actual musical achievements. Mr. Blackwood was delighted with all the media attention. He gave interviews to several newspapers, talking about his decision to help Zara and how proud he was of her success. He spoke about the importance of giving back to the community and supporting young talent. "I knew from the moment I heard her play that she was special," he told one reporter. "It's been incredibly rewarding to watch her grow and develop under my sponsorship." Zara felt frustrated when she read these interviews. Mr. Blackwood was taking credit for her success in a way that made her feel like she had played no real part in her own journey. But she also knew that speaking out against him might hurt her chances in the competition, so she stayed quiet. The night of the Carnegie Hall competition finally arrived. Zara had never performed in such a large, prestigious venue before. The hall was filled with music industry professionals, critics, and families of the competing musicians. Maria sat in the audience wearing the nicest dress she owned, feeling proud and nervous at the same time. She had watched Zara practice for this moment for months, and she knew her daughter was ready. Mr. Blackwood also attended, sitting in the VIP section with other sponsors and supporters. He had invited several of his business associates to watch his pianist perform. When it was Zara's turn to perform, she walked onto the stage feeling calm and focused. The huge piano on the Carnegie Hall stage was even more beautiful than Mr. Blackwood's Steinway. The lights were bright, and she could feel the attention of everyone in the audience. Zara began with the required piece, a challenging composition by Rachmaninoff that demanded both technical skill and emotional depth. As she played, she felt completely connected to the music. Every note was exactly where it needed to be. Every phrase expressed exactly what she wanted to say. The audience listened in absolute silence, hanging on every note. Even the other competing pianists, who were waiting backstage, stopped talking to listen to her performance. When she finished the first piece, the applause was immediate and enthusiastic. But Zara's most important moment was still coming. For her second piece, she had chosen the Chopin Minute Waltz that she had played that first night 4 years ago. But this performance was completely different from that magical, untrained moment. Now she understood every nuance of the piece, every emotional subtlety that Chopin had written into the music. As she played, Zara thought about her journey from that scared 12-year-old girl to the confident musician she had become. She thought about all the hours of practice, all the difficult lessons with Professor Voss, all the times she had wanted to give up but had kept going. The music flowed from her fingers with perfect technique and deep feeling. She was no longer playing the piece. She was living it, breathing it, making it part of herself and sharing it with everyone who was listening. When she finished, the entire audience stood up and applauded. Several people in the front rows were wiping tears from their eyes. Even the judges, who were supposed to remain neutral, were clapping enthusiastically. The other performances that evening were excellent. But everyone in the hall knew they had heard something special from Zara. The combination of technical perfection and emotional honesty in her playing was rare at any age, but remarkable in someone so young. When the results were announced later that evening, Zara had won first place overall. She also received special recognition for artistic interpretation, an award usually given to much older musicians. The newspapers the next day were full of praise for Zara's performance. Music critics called it transcendent and a performance that reminded everyone why they fell in love with classical music. One reviewer wrote that this young woman has the rare gift of making every note count, every phrase meaningful. But even in these glowing reviews, many articles continue to focus on the inspiring story of Mr. Blackwood's generosity rather than on Zara's artistic achievement. The narrative of the generous billionaire and the grateful recipient seemed to be more interesting to reporters than the story of a talented young woman who had worked incredibly hard to develop her natural gifts. After the competition, several prestigious music schools contacted Professor Voss about Zara, the Juilliard School, the Curtis Institute of Music, and the New England Conservatory all offered her full scholarships to continue her musical education. Professor Voss was thrilled but not surprised. "I knew this day would come," she told Maria. "Zara has the talent and dedication to succeed at the highest levels of classical music." Mr. Blackwood was also pleased with the attention and prestige that came from being associated with such a successful young musician. He began planning ways to use Zara's success to benefit his own business and social standing. But for Zara, the most important thing was that she had proven to herself that she belonged on the same stage as the best young musicians in the world. She had come so far from that first night when she touched the piano keys and felt magic in her fingertips. The scared little girl, who used to sit quietly in the kitchen, was gone. In her place was a confident young artist who knew that her talent. 2 years had passed since Zara's triumph at Carnegie Hall. Now 18 years old, she was in her second year at the Juilliard School, studying with some of the world's most famous piano teachers. Her talent had continued to grow, and she was already being invited to perform with major orchestras around the country, but success had brought unexpected challenges. As Zara's fame grew, so did the attention on her background story. The media loved to tell the tale of the rags to riches pianist who had been discovered by a generous billionaire. This narrative followed her everywhere, sometimes overshadowing her actual musical accomplishments. "I'm tired of being called the maid's daughter who made good," Zara told her mother during one of their weekly phone calls. "I want people to focus on my music, not on where I came from." Maria understood her daughter's frustration. She was proud of the hard work that had brought Zara to this point. But she also knew that the constant focus on their humble beginnings was starting to bother Zara. "Maybe it is time to tell your own story," Maria suggested, "instead of letting other people define who you are." This conversation planted an idea in Zara's mind. She began thinking about how she could use her platform to help other talented young people who faced the same barriers she had overcome. Working with Professor Voss and several other music educators, Zara established the Hidden Talents Foundation. The organization's mission was to identify musically gifted children from low-income families and provide them with instruments, lessons, and opportunities to develop their abilities. "There are probably hundreds of children out there with the same natural talent I had," Zara explained to a reporter during an interview about the foundation. "But they never get the chance to discover and develop their gifts because their families cannot afford music lessons or instruments." The foundation started small, working with just 5 children in New York City. Zara personally auditioned each child and helped match them with qualified teachers. She also performed benefit concerts to raise money for the program. One of the first children helped by the foundation was a 10-year-old boy named Marcus who lived in the same Queens neighborhood where Zara had grown up. Like Zara, he had taught himself to play piano using YouTube videos and an old keyboard. When Zara heard him play, she was amazed by his natural ability. "You remind me of myself at your age," she told Marcus after his audition. "With proper training, you could become an incredible musician." The foundation provided Marcus with a real piano, weekly lessons with a professional teacher, and support for his family. Within a year, he was performing in recitals and competitions, following a path similar to the one Zara had taken. Meanwhile, Maria had been able to quit her job as a maid. Zara's success had brought enough money for Maria to focus full-time on managing her daughter's career and helping run the foundation. It felt good to Maria to finally be finished with cleaning other people's homes and to be working on something that helped other families like theirs. Mr. Blackwood continued to take credit for Zara's success whenever the opportunity arose. He served on the board of the Hidden Talents Foundation and spoke frequently about the importance of supporting young artists. But his involvement was mostly for show, and Zara had learned to manage her career independently. He provided the initial opportunity, Zara said diplomatically when reporters asked about Mr. Blackwood's role in her success. But music has always been my passion and my choice. My talent came from within, and my success came from years of hard work. She had learned to acknowledge his contribution without diminishing her own achievements. It was a delicate balance, but Zara had grown wise enough to handle these situations with grace. The foundation continued to grow, and within 3 years it was helping over 50 children across the country. Zara performed benefit concerts in major cities, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for music education. She also used her influence to convince music schools and conservatories to offer more scholarships for talented students from low-income families during her 3rd year. At Juilliard, Zara received an invitation that would change her life again. The London Symphony Orchestra asked her to perform as a soloist in a series of concerts at the Royal Albert Hall. This was the kind of opportunity that most pianists only dreamed of receiving. The concerts were a huge success. Critics in London praised Zara's maturity and depth of interpretation that belied her young age. One reviewer wrote that Miss Santos plays with the wisdom of someone twice her age and the technical brilliance of a master. After the London performances, invitations poured in from orchestras around the world. Zara was asked to perform in Paris, Vienna, Tokyo, and Sydney. She was becoming an international star, known not just in classical music circles but to general audiences who were drawn to her inspiring story and beautiful playing. But even as her career reached new heights, Zara never forgot the lessons she had learned. From her early experiences with Mr. Blackwood, she was careful to maintain control over her own narrative, and to use her success to help others rather than just to benefit herself. On her 21st birthday, Zara gave a special concert at Carnegie Hall to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Hidden Talents Foundation. The program included performances by several of the young musicians the foundation had helped, including Marcus, who was now 13 and already winning competitions. Maria sat in the audience, watching her daughter conduct the concert and introduce each young performer. She thought about how far they had come from that tiny apartment in Queens, where Zara used to practice on a broken keyboard while Maria worked long hours as a maid. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zara said to the audience during the concert, "these young artists represent the future of classical music. They come from families who could never afford expensive music lessons, but their talent and determination have brought them to this stage. They are proof that musical genius exists everywhere, waiting to be discovered and nurtured." The audience gave a standing ovation, not just for the beautiful music they had heard, but for the message behind it. After the concert, a reporter asked Zara what she hoped to accomplish in the future. "I want to change how we think about musical talent and opportunity," she said. "For too long, classical music has been seen as something only for wealthy families who can afford expensive lessons and instruments. But music belongs to everyone. Some of the most beautiful music in the world has come from people who started with nothing but their natural gifts and their determination to succeed." Mr. Blackwood attended the anniversary concert, sitting in the same VIP section where he had watched Zara perform years earlier. But now he was just one face in a crowd of supporters, no longer the central figure in Zara's story. During the reception after the concert, he approached Zara to congratulate her. "You've done very well for yourself," he said, with the same patronizing tone he had used when she was 12 years old. "Thank you," Zara replied politely. "I've been very fortunate to have so many people support my journey." It was a gracious response, but Mr. Blackwood could sense that something had changed. Zara was no longer the grateful child who had depended on his charity. She had become a successful artist who had earned her place in the music world through her own talent and hard work. Zara continued to build her career and expand her foundation. She often thought about that first night when she had touched the piano keys in Mr. Blackwood's living room. The magic she had felt then had been real, but it had only been the beginning of her story. Not the whole story. The little girl who had sat quietly in the kitchen, dreaming of making music, had grown into a woman who was changing the world one note at a time. She had learned that talent could come from anywhere, but it took courage, determination, and support from others to turn that talent into something meaningful. Now, when young musicians approached her after concerts to tell her their own stories of struggle and dreams, Zara would listen carefully and offer encouragement. "Your background does not define your limits," she would tell them. "Music is a language that speaks to everyone, regardless of where they come from. If you have the passion and the willingness to work hard, you can achieve anything." The Hidden Talents Foundation had grown beyond anything Zara had originally imagined. It now operated in 12 cities, helping hundreds of young musicians every year. Some of them would become professional musicians, others would simply enjoy music as a lifelong passion, but all of them would have the chance to discover and develop their gifts, something that might never have happened without the foundation's support. Maria had become the foundation's executive director, using the organizational skills she had developed over years of hard work to build something that would last long beyond Zara's performing career. She was proud not just of her daughter's success, but of the difference they were making together in other families' lives. At 22, Zara was recognized as one of the leading pianists of her generation. She had recorded several albums, performed with the world's best orchestras, and won every major competition and award available to classical musicians. But perhaps her greatest achievement was proving that extraordinary talent exists in unexpected places, waiting for someone to listen and believe in its potential.